Hello, listeners, and welcome to the James Trafford fan channel, brought to you in association with the Known and Never podcast. We are here giving you reaction from the Friday night's draw with Sunderland and that very dramatic last 10 minutes. I am joined by regular panellist Tom Whittaker, and we are going to be looking back on a fantastic point or a missed 3 points. We're going to let you decide. So, listeners, as ever, buckle up. Let's go. And we are joined as ever by Tom Claret, Tom Whittaker, our regular panelist. Tom, hello, how are you?
Hello, yes, very well, thanks, Natalie. How about yourself?
Yeah, we are good, thank you. It is Sunday night. We've had 48 hours to let the drama of Friday night settle. We've been poring over all the social medias, enjoying what has been some fantastic content out there, and we're going to delve into that. Listeners, before we set off with this week's analysis show following that game on Friday night, stop. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, make sure that you do not miss an episode of the Known and Never podcast, because we want to keep bringing you content and we want to bring you along for the ride. So before we get cracking, press subscribe. Tom, it was another draw at home, another 0-0, which we'll come on to in a minute in terms of frustrating, but we can't do anything other than dive straight in for that bonkers last 10 minutes at Turf Moor. Super James Trafford in goal. Where do we even start with that? You start with us. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, it was a game that, like so many of our home games this season, it felt like it was meandering towards its inevitable 0-0 conclusion. I think the subs that Parker made just before when he brought Koleosho and Sonner on, I think they were probably an attempt to go gung-ho and win it, but they backfired badly. We looked all over the shop after those subs were made, and when Sunderland got that penalty, it was a little bit out of nowhere in terms of they hadn't really threatened the goal much before, but when that happened, you thought, oh God, well, we don't look like we're going to score. That's it, kind of thing. And then obviously Trafford, he has to fight through. I mean, tremendous admiration for him for fighting through A, his dodgy hamstring, and B, he's incredibly unreliable.
What a trooper. What an absolute trooper. What a trooper.
Really brave. Not enough's been talked about the bravery of overcoming those obstacles.
Honestly, I genuinely just don't know how he was managing to survive. It's really good. Well, let's have a quick look before we get on to the heroics of James Trafford. I think we've got a couple of things to talk about, because we've talked a lot about the frustrations with VAR. We've talked a lot about poor performance of referees in the Premier League. But my goodness, does the Championship take it to another level? We had 2 penalties, both of which look like Burnley have been very hard done by. Starting with the first one, I mean, it was outside of the box. I think that's pretty clear now. Everybody looks at this. You look at the replay, the tackle. Given that that's not even up for debate here, does that bring with it a justification for introducing VAR into the Championship, Tom? Or are you... No, absolutely not.
I'm a very anti-VAR kind of person. I think it just slows the game down. I mean, I think you've seen from our time in the Premier League and from others, just because a decision gets VAR doesn't mean you actually come to the correct decision. Sometimes the referee will make the correct decision in the VAR and intervene and make it incorrect. So, I mean, it's one of those things that when something as obvious as that happens to you, you think that's an obvious solution. And then obviously if we'd have had it in that incident, perhaps it would have been a free kick, but then perhaps maybe Egan Riley would have had a red card as well because he was last man. So there's that to consider as well with that one. But I mean, if you ever ask me in any situation,
just pause on that and just explain to our listeners who maybe haven't thought of that what that means, because there's the whole double jeopardy rule and there's the whole thing. So a lot of people are not understanding if the referee had have got it right, what impact that would have had on us. So talk us through that.
Yeah, so the double jeopardy rule, I think they brought it in a few years ago to stop kind of use a double whammy of a red card and a penalty. Felt it was too harsh a punishment for one foul. And it basically says if the player's making a genuine attempt to get the ball and he doesn't get there, and he gives away a penalty in doing so, he can't be given a straight red for denying a goal scoring opportunity at the same time. And I think that's why Egan Riley got a yellow, because obviously he was the wrong side of him. I mean, I have to say, it's kind of, I think it's been kind of glossed over that it was, the complaint's been that it was outside the box. There wasn't a great deal of contact after. I think he just slightly clipped his heel, but then you see he'll take another step, then do the old kick himself in the back of the leg and fall over. He's done that deliberately to make it look like the contact happened inside the box, and I think the referee's fallen for it. I think it would have been incredibly harsh to give him a red card, even had the incident occurred outside the box, but then you would have had, because it wouldn't have been a penalty, obviously, if the foul had been given outside the box, you'd have probably said, well, he's decided to go for an opportunity, therefore it would have been a red card. So while they might not have had the free hit, then we'd have had to do the last 10 minutes of that Egan Riley and then potentially the next game as well. So it didn't work out too badly for us in that sense, really.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so that's the first one. I mean, I think obviously we all know that was, justice, Phil Bird justice served with that penalty being saved. The second one, I don't think's, to me, as clear cut as the first one. A lot of people, certainly the ripples around the ground with messages coming through from people watching it at home on TV, and immediate reaction after the game was that the second one was as equally an injustice. And certainly on some replays that you can see some angles, it does look a little bit, like soft. But actually on some angles, it also, I can see why it's been given as well. Also, some comments that allegedly he gave it for a handball, which to me is a bit of a nonsense. I don't see how in any scenario that's been given as a handball. What's your thoughts on the second one, Tom? What do you think it was given for, and was it a penalty?
Well, I don't think with the referee that we had on Friday, you can rule out any decision on the basis that it would be a nonsense, because he was very happy to give a few nonsense decisions on it throughout the evening. At the time, to me, it looked a penalty. The trouble is that Son has gone to ground when he doesn't need to. He's gone to ground far too early. And I think the Sunderland player's been a bit cute. I think he's kind of left his leg there, gone over it. I don't think there's really, if that happened on the halfway line and he could have got round and he would have, I don't think there's necessarily enough contact to bring him down. But then if you go down like that, you don't get near the ball as he didn't, then you're going to give the referee a decision to make. And we saw from the way that he refereed the game that if he could give Sunderland a decision, then he was going to take the opportunity to do that. And that's what he did. At the time, I thought penalty. I had a few text messages come through at the end of the game, like you from neutrals, and they were all saying it wasn't a penalty. The Sky commentator obviously was a bit confused by it being given. I think there's plenty of neutrals who'd say it was soft, but that one to me is not. I can see why that was given, and if it went the other way and we got it, I don't think there'd be too many people saying that was a ridiculous decision. So, yeah, I can understand why he gave that one. I suppose the only frustration is you'd like to think that he would have realised at some point that the first one he gave wasn't a penalty, wasn't inside the box, and then maybe when it is a bit soft, that would have played on his mind a bit and said, well, I'm not. It was almost double jeopardy then as well. Once I'll give one that's completely incorrect and one that's perhaps a bit soft. You'd have thought maybe he would have got the benefit of the doubt, but as I say, the way he refereed the game by and large, he wasn't keen to give him the benefit of the doubt in anything. I didn't think. My
dad was adamant. He was spitting feathers after the game. He was adamant that he was a Mackham all the way through. He was going mad, absolutely going mad. Well, poor Wilson Isidore is going to be seeing James Trafford shaped monsters under the bed probably for the rest of his career. But I think there's two elements to Trafford's performance, and a couple of things. One of which that has been mentioned for me is that he's largely had bugger all to do for 90 minutes. So for him to show that level of sharpness and professionalism and just thought in those dying stages of the game, for me, is pretty impressive. But I think there's two things for him. There's the fact there's the gamesmanship leading up to the penalties. And secondly, there's actually the quality of the saves in the first place. In terms of the gamesmanship, Tom, and obviously we know that Trafford's got that in him. And now Ashley Barnes is back at the club. I think he's just instilling it in everybody. Did he go too far? Are Sunderland fans right to be absolutely? And I had one Sunderland fan on a radio phone in that I heard on Friday night said that the biggest travesty for this, which I find hilarious given that the biggest travesty was a penalty that wasn't a penalty, but okay, fine, was that the referee gave him too much leniency for the first penalty, should have booked him then, which means that the second penalty doesn't ever do any of that because he's scared of getting sent off. And that's the injustice for Sunderland. Did he go too far on that thing, or do you think it was just about enough?
I think it's a bit of a weak excuse, personally. I mean, I don't really see how much difference it makes having to wait a couple of minutes before you take a penalty. If you're a professional footballer and you can't beat the keeper from 12 yards with 2 goes at it, no matter how long you've had to wait to take it, I just think that's a bit of a weak excuse. I mean, he's obviously wasting time. He's obviously trying to get in his head a little bit. I don't really see what difference it makes, to be honest. I don't really know why he got booked. Was it because you got the physio on, didn't you, for the second one? So if the physio's coming on and treating an injury, I mean, you see it every week, don't you? People going down with non-existent injuries. You see it every week in the Championship where someone will go down just to stop the play, and then as soon as the ref stops it, then miraculously they're up and they never needed physio in the first place. Just an extension of that for me. I was a bit surprised he got a yellow, to be honest, because I don't see how you can book someone when they've had the physio actually come on the pitch,
Yeah, I'm just trying to see now if anybody's given. Yeah, I'm just trying to see if anybody's given any commentary about it.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously was time wasting, but it's difficult as a referee to discern what is time wasting and what isn't.
Yeah.
To me, I mean, you could have booked. There was in the first half, I've seen a lot of Sunderland fans complaining that Roberts went down holding his foot. The ref stopped the game, and then Roberts got up and just played on. That you could say that's a yellow card, couldn't you? You could say he was cheating or his time wasting or play acting or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just to go on a slight tangent. You were talking about VAR earlier, and you've got these decisions in the Premier League where you've got offsides that are being measured to the tiniest millimetre, and yet things like time wasting, the amount of time added on at the end of the game is just completely arbitrary. It's just pulled off the top of the referee's head, and it's whatever he feels like at the end of the day. So it's just very. I mean, could he have had 2 yellows? Yeah. Could he have no yellows? Yeah, I would have thought so. No ref's ever going to be brave enough to give a goalie a second yellow for time waste, and I think we know that as well. How many keepers do you see get a booking after 45 minutes time waste?
To book them for the first one for time waste, and you're just like, well, that's just ridiculous.
It's pointless, isn't it? They go over and show me yellow, and then they just carry on doing it for the rest of the game, and no referee, as I say, no ref's ever going to be brave enough to give them a second yellow. So. Yeah, I don't think it. But as I say, my main point is if you're a professional footballer and you can't score a penalty if you had to wait for 2 minutes before you took it, then you shouldn't be on penalties, in my opinion. And I'd be surprised if Isidore took another penalty for the rest of the season, and that's because he obviously wasn't kind of mentally strong enough to take them.
Yeah, that's a point that a lot of the Sunderland fans have been making, that he shouldn't have been on those penalties in the first place. But it's difficult, isn't it? Because I just don't think that Sunderland could win there. If they hook him after the first penalty, what sort of signal does that give to him going forward? If you allow him a second one and he misses both of them, then it's a criminal loss of potentially 3 really important points there. James Trafford, as we know, came to everybody's attention following the under-21s, his penalty save heroics there. And so we knew he was going to save, but they were still excellent saves from a technical perspective, Tom, irrespective of the gamesmanship. He's having some season, is Trafford.
Yeah, I mentioned a few weeks ago, there's a lot of games where he doesn't really have anything to do, and I think you were right in what you said. Until those penalties in the last 10 minutes, I don't think he had a right lot to do in that game. He had the one where Isidore hit the post. Everything else that they threw out was routine until the last 10 minutes. But it's a skill in itself to have to keep yourself focused as a goalkeeper when you've had such long periods of inactivity. I think it's probably proven to everyone that he's too good for this league. I don't think he's necessarily the biggest part of why we've conceded so few goals, but he's certainly a big part of it.
Yeah,
and he was obviously the difference between a point and no point. On Friday night, the saves, I should say, were fantastic. The penalties, the only thing you could perhaps say was that they went right in the corner, but he hit them with some force, and it's difficult to get across. To get low as well, especially for the second
one. Yeah, that was a sublime save. It was incredible. Yeah. No, I completely agree. He is too good for this league, but I think, and I said this last season, he had to have a season in the Championship. To go from League One to facing City at turf in the Premier League was a nonsense decision from Vincent Kompany, and I will literally die on this mountain saying that, because I think it was just awful. I think that man very nearly damaged James Trafford's career beyond repair last season. So it's nice to see that he is having that comfortable, and he can make that step up to the Championship, which can be a very forgiving league. I'd be interested to see how James Trafford would cope in the next season's Championship, because we've got into this routine at the moment where it's kind of one on, one off in the Championship. Last season was brutally hard, but we were out of it. This season and the season before was one of the softer Championships. Next season, with what looks like the 3 promoted sides coming back down in it and some big sides not going up again, it's going to be brutal next year. So I'd be interested to see how he does there. But yeah, I think we all know now he's going to be at Newcastle next season anyway, so it should be fine. Tom, turning to the rest of the game, the heroics of the last 10 minutes and the weirdness and the euphoria that it sent us all off with did mask a little bit a recurring problem with this squad, particularly at home, and that being a squad of 2 halves. A fantastic first half performance. I thought we were the better side the first half. Thought we controlled Sunderland very well. They didn't really look like they were going to do anything in front of goal. We kept some of their key players, and I think for me the key battle in midfield, their midfield supposed to be outstanding, one of the best in the division. I thought we nullified them pretty well, but for all the good we were in the first half, the second half I thought we were absolutely appalling. A very unusually quiet game for Brownhill. We've been shouting for a long time about getting Foster and Fleming together on the same pitch. Fleming hardly broke into a sweat. Fine, he didn't get an awful lot of service, but it just was an unusually very quiet game for him. We get into the point, I think, with this squad, Tom, where there's no middle ground between them. They're either excellent or really rank poor. Do you think that's maybe unfair for me to say that, or do you agree? And what's going wrong when we have these poor halves?
I actually didn't think we were that bad in the second half. I did think we edged it until the last sort of 10, 15 minutes and I think the difference was so stark in those last 10, 15 minutes because we did get pulverised that I think it can make you forget what the rest of the half was like. I just thought we had a lot more of the ball than they did. I thought without really testing the keeper, I thought we looked more threatening. We had the one in the first couple of minutes where Fleming, who actually had a really poor game, he kind of shanks it on his right foot, and it's quite a presentable chance.
Oh, was that when they went down the other end? They missed an open net as well. Izador missed an open net as well. There was like the first 2 shots in the first half. Both sides missed an open net. It was like we almost wanted them to start again and say, like, can we just like blow the whistle again and just start the second half again? I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, so that was a really good chance, I thought. And then, as you say, Izador hits the post, and I think until the last 15 minutes, that was it from them. The big one, I suppose, as well, is when Brownhill knocks it down and Fleming. At the time, I thought I was just kind of swung at that and missed it, but then you see it back, and it's quite a clumsy challenge from 09 because he's the wrong side. He comes across and he doesn't get the ball, and I think the frustration for me is, I mean, I don't really think that's a penalty necessarily. I think it was a bit of a coming together, but when the referee's so keen to give those 2 penalties for Sunderland, and he doesn't even look at that one, and it's.
Yeah.
You know, I think Fleming's been a bit, he was hard done by Blackburn. We should have had a penalty there as well for him. And I don't know if it's just a thing where they see a centre forward and a centre half come together for something like that and they're just not inclined to give them. But that could have easily been a penalty. And if we get that and we score it, we know what we're like at seeing out 1-0 leads. I think
that's true, actually. That is true.
Yeah, we bring on Egan maybe and we sit 3 at the back and you'd be pretty confident we'd go on and win 1-0. And it felt to me like we were probably for the first half an hour of the second half, if anyone was going to score, it was going to be us, although we didn't threaten too much. I think Anthony cut inside another shot that was fairly comfortably saved by the keeper. It's the usual things let us down, just the final ball, the tempo being a bit too slow. We'd make a nice bit of an opening on the right hand side, and then instead of getting the ball over, we'd just come back inside and start recycling it again. But it's the same old problems we've got. We're not a very creative force. We're too cautious. We're too happy to draw 0-0 when we could go and try and win the game 1-0. And then ironically, it was actually bringing on an extra winger and maybe having a bit of a go at it that proved our downfall, I think, for the last 15 minutes. But,
it's careful what we're wishing for here.
Yeah, we've drawn way too many games this season at home. We've drawn way too many games 0-0. But, and that's, again, it's 2 points dropped in terms of the season because of that previous. But in isolation, against one of the best teams in the league, and I have to say they were the best team we've played at the Surf this season. The point's not a bad result, I think. So I don't want to slag the performance off too much in that one.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think sometimes I can get too critical either way in trying to fight, particularly when you are presenting a show like this and it's literally my job to try and find the talking points from the show. I think sometimes I can be maybe a little bit too critical. I just remember feeling quite frustrated in the second half. I just didn't feel like it was as good a performance as the first. I think the big thing for me and the big worry for me, Tom, like we're averaging at the moment, we've got a scoring record of just 1.19 goals per game. Can a side that, and obviously with Leeds and Sheffield United this weekend have now overtaken us again by winning both of their games, can a side that scores so few goals hope to get automatic promotion out of this league?
Saying a word, no. We're not going to get automatic promotion if we carry on creating and scoring at the rate we're doing. Something needs to change, whether that's the manager's tactics, the manager himself, or bringing in some personnel between now and the end of the window. Seems to have gone quite quiet on that front. We've had the links to Whittaker and Cannon that don't seem to be going anywhere. Now I'm hearing like Stuart Armstrong and John Joe Shelby, now good squad players maybe, but they're not going to improve our first team. We've already had the kind of the guts of the squad ripped out in the summer, and you thought at least maybe, given that we've made so much money in sales in the summer, maybe we'll reinvest a bit in January, but it doesn't really appear to be coming to fruition. I think the manager's job's pretty safe, and I can understand why, given that we've only lost 2 games all season, we're so high up in the league, etc. Is the manager likely to change things? No, I think he's constantly drawing 0-0 as a feature, not a bug. I think he's quite happy just to draw games 0-0. He doesn't seem to be particularly bothered as long as we get clean sheets, and that's why I think we'll end up in the playoffs, because we don't score enough goals. We don't. These games at home, and we've done it to death, but some of the teams have drawn it at home against Stoke, QPR, Preston, Blackburn, and we're not even trying to put these teams away. It gets to 10, 15 minutes at the end, we're not chucking another player up, we're not putting balls in the box, we're just passing it sideways slowly around, hoping that a gap's going to magically appear. And when you look at our home fixtures, in the second half of the season, we've still got teams like Luton, Oxford. These teams are going to come and they're going to put 10 behind the ball, and do you have any confidence that we're going to beat these teams? I certainly don't. So unless our away record's perfect, or unless we keep up the clean sheets and our 1.19 goals per game, I think if you take out Cardiff and Luton as well, the first 2 games, we're actually scoring less than a goal a game, which is probably a true reflection given the squad we've got. So unless we can win every game 1-0 between now and the end of the season, and that's going to be difficult to do, I'd say no, we're not going to get in the top 2. It's going to have to be playoffs. The one thing you might say is this kind of style where we're grinding out and we're difficult to beat might be good in a playoff campaign. But
it's likely to be Sunderland in a playoff, and I wouldn't fancy them. It's likely to be Sunderland, Burnley at Wembley, because I imagine they're going to finish 3rd and 4th.
What we could do is just every time they come forward, just give them a penalty and hope Wilson Isidore takes it. That might be the best way to victory.
It is. I think that's the strategy, isn't it? We just need to put a world-class keeper in the goal, and the rest of the team's irrelevant. So, no, I think I share that concern, Tom. I think we've still got another week and a half left to go of the transfer window, and it's a pretty critical one. I think we need to. Obviously, we have coming up in the next 24 hours or so. For those of you who are keeping an eye on it, we have our Plymouth preview with our Plymouth away fan, and we talk about Morgan Whittaker there and where he plays. Apparently his best position is going to be as an attacking right winger. We need, if he comes in, great. I think that will help the attacking flair, but we still need more than that if we're going to hope to get to automatic. So let's see. Thanks, Tom. That's been a really good analysis of that Sunderland game. We will speak to you, of course, next week. We've got the Plymouth game to look back on. Are you going to Plymouth? Are you making that trip down?
Yeah, I spend every weekend in our WhatsApp group complaining about how boring I find the football and how we don't try and win games, and then I book
I'm going to Plymouth.
And get the train down to Plymouth, yeah. So I've been to the ground before, but not seen Burnley there, so it'd be nice to get that.
Yeah, I've never been to Plymouth for obvious reasons. So, yeah, I should really have gone. It's one of those ways, if Plymouth away had been on a Saturday, then I would have gone. It would be the one I would have been ticked off this season. But, yeah, I'm working in London on Wednesday anyway, so I can't make it there. But it's, it's going to be a long, long day. Well, Godspeed. Bring those 3 points back, and we will look forward to hearing from you after the weekend, ahead of this weekend's fixture, to let us know how it got to. Listeners, that's all we've got time for from that analysis show this week. Do keep your eyes peeled, because we've got the preview show coming up with that away trip to Plymouth, and keep an eye on socials, because we'll let you know when the rest of our analysis and preview shows are coming out. Do not get off this channel without pressing that subscribe button, please. Whether you're listening to this via our YouTube channel or via a podcast, there is a subscribe button. Turn on notifications and never miss your favourite Burnley podcast. I've been Natalie Bromley. This has been the No Nay Never podcast. Until next time.
The No Nay Never podcast is brought to you in association with the talkSPORT Fan Network. Our host and editor is Natalie Bromley, and the show is produced by Matt Moss. Our resident statistician is Dave Roberts, and our FPL expert is Adam Dennett. The analysis show team is collectively Tom Whittaker, Rich Steele, George Poole, Charlotte Rigby, and Adam Dennett. Our music is provided by George Gaskell, and our newsletter team is headed up by Jamie Smith. If you don't already, you can subscribe to our newsletter by visiting nonaynever.substack.com. Thanks as ever go to our partners talkSPORT. We are proud to be associated with the talkSPORT Fan Network.